An old rancher cruelly abandons a blind mare in the middle of the desert, but fate has a surprise in store that no one thought possible. In the scorching heart of the southwestern Badlands, where the relentless sun punishes the earth and swirling winds turn the endless sand into a sea of challenges, unfolds a story full of injustice, redemption, and the transformative power of compassion. Malcolm Carter, an unyielding and feared rancher whose reputation for severity and ruthlessness precedes him throughout the region, embodies a man honed by life's hardships, yet lacking the sensitivity needed to see the beauty and worth of all forms of life. Among the many animals under his control stands Star, a mare once graced with serene beauty and an indomitable spirit, even though her eyes, once windows to freedom, remain clouded by blindness. Despite the suffering etched into her expression, Star carries the dignity of one born to endure and fight, having survived both neglect and her owner's heavy hand. On a blistering morning, pressed by financial troubles and a relentless thirst for prestige and power, Malcolm decides, coldly and without mercy, to abandon Star deep within the painted mesa desert. The choice arises from disdain and the belief that a blind mare would only hinder his plans and tarnish the spotless image he works so hard to maintain. Without a single backward glance or the slightest sign of regret, Star is left to fend for herself in a harsh setting where the desert, with its endless dunes and oppressive heat, turns every moment into a battle for survival. Yet destiny holds surprises for those who, even though wounded, possess an unshakable will to live and reinvent themselves. While the sun beats down mercilessly and the sands bear silent witness to her abandonment, Star, though weakened, refuses to yield. Her hooves mark the pace of an unforeseen struggle in which nature itself seems to conspire in her favor. Winds that once brought only suffering and parched days begin whispering promises of change, as though each grain of sand harbors the seed of an unexpected rebirth. On this solitary journey, fate brings Star face to face with Helen, a healer living on the fringes of society, a woman blessed with a profound sensitivity and ancestral knowledge, able to listen to the desert's murmurs and unravel nature's hidden signs. Gifted with an almost mystical intuition, Helen sees in this forsaken mare a being who, though scarred by pain, carries within her the strength to surpass her own limits. Confronted with Star, the healer instantly senses that the animal is meant for something greater than a tragic end in the desert. Moved by an innate compassion and the desire to restore lost dignity, Helen decides to intervene and guide Star along a path of healing and relearning. Walking step by step with the mare across the vast and treacherous reaches of the desert, the healer draws on her knowledge of herbs and rituals to awaken the vital energy hidden in the depths of that arid land. Amid long journeys where intense heat mingles with a soft breeze of hope, the two press on toward a forgotten oasis, a place where crystalline waters offer a chance for rebirth and where the dune's shadow provides safe haven. Meanwhile, Malcolm's cruel past emerges in unexpected ways, casting guilt and regret upon him. Former friends, rivals, and even those who once admired his ruthless authority begin questioning his actions, revealing that inhumane deeds do not elude the silent justice nature itself can bring about through mysterious means. In this setting, the desert ceases to be a mere backdrop for abandonment and becomes an active character, driving change. Every mile Star covers signifies not only a triumph over limits set by a hostile environment, but also the rediscovery of her own worth and lost freedom. Gradually, the mare's transformation becomes a powerful symbol of resilience, proving that even when confronted by adversity and human cruelty, life tirelessly seeks to affirm and reinvent itself. While Helen dedicates her days and nights to restoring Star's health and hope, fate orchestrates twists, revealing the true majesty lies in the ability to rise after each fall, marked by chance encounters, deep symbolism, and a quiet struggle against fatalism. The story invites us to reflect on the transformative power of empathy and the justice that, even if delayed, reaches those whose hearts remain open to recognize and cherish life's inherent beauty. Amid the wind's echoes and the soft hum of dunes, Star's journey also mirrors the souls who, like her, have been hurt but, with support from those who grasp life's secret language, can reclaim the light that makes them unique. The clash between a cruel past and a resilient drive toward new beginnings makes it clear that redemption is within reach of those who refuse to be defined by their scars, and that often justice does not come through mighty hands but rather through small acts of love and care which, combined, can alter one's destiny. Thus, the narrative stands as a tribute to hope and the power of reinvention, showing how every choice can rewrite stories and how, even amid the greatest challenges, the future holds ineffable surprises for those who never lose faith in the possibility of a new dawn. The sun rose slowly over Malcolm Carter's dry rock ranch, painting the sky with orange hues that contrasted sharply with the chill in his heart. At 55, the rancher bore on his weathered face the deep lines carved by decades of hard work and harsh decisions. His eyes, narrow and piercing like a predator on the prowl, rarely betrayed any sign of compassion. In this part of the southwestern desert, his name inspired both respect and fear. Sprawling over acres of land acquired through dubious deals and the unpaid debts of neighbors less fortunate than he, Dry Rock Ranch stood as a testament to Malcolm's ambition. Its main house, a formidable structure of stone and timber, rose prominently on the horizon. In the adjoining stables and pens, dozens of animals served one sole purpose: multiplying his wealth. Among them was Star, a mare with a coat as white as snow that never fell in these parts, and whose body bore the marks of a life of labor and sacrifice. Once the region's most striking animal, admired at livestock fairs and coveted by other ranchers, her eyes were now veiled by a milky haze that had robbed her of sight. Yet those eyes still held a peculiar spark, as if safeguarding memories of better times. Star's blindness developed gradually, the result of years of neglect and constant exposure to the merciless desert sun. When Malcolm noticed she was losing her vision, he showed no concern. To him, animals were mere tools, disposable the moment they ceased to be useful. That particular morning, the rancher walked heavily through the stable, sizing up each animal like a miser counting coins. His expression darkened with every step. A prolonged dry spell had laid waste to his crops, and creditors were clamoring for overdue payments. Costs had to be cut. Anything he deemed dead weight had to go. "I have no room on my ranch for useless animals," he muttered to himself, his gaze resting on Star, who remained still in her corner, sensing his presence through the heightened awareness her blindness had sharpened. Without hesitation, Malcolm ordered 2 of his most loyal ranch hands to ready the mare. Accustomed to obeying silently, they exchanged anxious glances but did as they were told. They looped a rope around Star's neck and led her out of the stable under their boss's satisfied gaze. "Take her to the Painted Mesa Desert. Leave her there and don't look back," Malcolm commanded in a voice as cutting as a blade. "A blind animal's just a waste of water and feed." The hands, Joseph, the older, and Manuel, the younger, guided Star to a battered pickup truck. The drive to the desert passed mostly in silence, broken only by the growl of the engine and the occasional whinny from the mare, as though she sensed what lay ahead. The bumpy road, strewn with rocks and potholes, led them to a remote area where the sand stretched to the horizon like a treacherous golden sea. When they finally stopped, Joseph hesitated. His eyes brimmed with sorrow as he watched the mare, who, though she could not see, seemed to know something terrible was happening. "You sure we have to do this, Manuel?" he asked in a low voice as they unloaded Star. "She won't last a day out here." Manuel, younger and more fearful of Malcolm's wrath, responded quickly. "Boss's orders, Joseph. You know what happens if we cross him." With reluctance, they led Star away from the truck, into a spot where desert sand swallowed everything in sight. They removed the rope from her neck and, without looking back, hurried to the pickup. As they drove off, Joseph couldn't help. One final glance in the rearview mirror. The sight of that white mare, alone against the vast expanse, scorched itself into his memory like a brand. Star remained motionless for a few moments, as though trying to make sense of her new surroundings. The brutal heat soon began to punish her body, and thirst became an immediate and merciless companion. Instinct, however, rose above despair. With tentative steps, she moved forward. Guided by faint sounds of life she could detect and subtle scents carried by the wind. Each step was a gamble. Her hooves sank into blistering sand, and her blindness made every movement a leap into the unknown. Yet she pressed on, propelled by an inner force she herself could not fully grasp. Deep down, she seemed to know she wasn't there to die, but rather to rediscover what it meant to be alive. Meanwhile, many miles away in the small town of White Mesa, Helen Brooks was mixing her usual remedies and salves, just as she did every morning. At 42, the healer had eyes that shone with the wisdom of one who had grown up learning the secrets of plants and the whispers of the wind. Coming from a long line of women skilled in natural healing, Helen had settled in the area over a decade ago following her mother's passing. Her modest adobe home, tucked away at the edge of White Mesa, was instantly recognizable by the verdant garden enveloping it. A pocket of life amid the stark dryness of the desert. There she cultivated rare medicinal herbs, some brought from distant places, others native to the region. Locals sought her, help for everything from minor complaints to ailments that city doctors could hardly name. That morning, Helen woke feeling restless, a disquiet she couldn't explain. As she prepared an herbal infusion, her thoughts felt far off, as though something or someone was calling to her from a remote place. "Something's not right," she murmured, glancing at the dry leaves swept across her yard by the wind. Just then her neighbor Sam, an old goat farmer, passed by hurriedly and stopped when he saw her. "Morning, Miss Helen. You won't believe what I just heard. Joseph and Manuel, Malcolm Carter's men, abandoned a blind mare in the Painted Mesa desert. They were talking about it at the general store, looked real upset, especially Joseph." The news struck Helen like a blow. She knew Malcolm Carter's reputation all too well and had treated animals that once belonged to his ranch. But leaving a blind horse to die in the desert marked a new level of cruelty, even for him. "Are you certain, Sam? When did this happen?" she asked, her unease growing. "Early this morning, real early. Folks say the mare's coat is white as snow and used to be the finest in the region." Helen didn't need to hear more. Within minutes, she had gathered her medical supplies, filled canteens with fresh water, and saddled her own horse, a middle-aged chestnut named River. Determination flared in her eyes as she made ready for trip. "I'll find her, Sam. No living creature deserves an end like that." Sam watched her ride off, torn between admiration and worry. The Painted Mesa Desert was vast and unforgiving, known for consuming even seasoned travelers who ventured without proper preparation. But Helen knew these lands as few did. She could read the desert's subtle signs, the shape of dunes that hinted at hidden water sources, the hardy plants in specific areas, and wind patterns that warned of looming shifts in weather. She rode with every sense on alert. By noon, the sun blazed overhead, and the heat was almost unbearable. Helen knew that if the mare was exposed for long, her chances of survival would plummet. After hours of searching, just as discouragement began to creep in, Helen glimpsed a white figure in the distance, standing out against the desert's golden sands. Drawing closer, her heart twisted at the mare's condition. Star had walked for miles, guided by nothing but instinct. Her once majestic body showed unmistakable signs of dehydration and exhaustion, yet she stood, a final act of defiance against the death hovering so near. Helen dismounted quickly, approaching with soft steps and a gentle voice to avoid scaring. "Easy, girl. I've come to help you. You're safe now." Star backed away at first, frightened by the sudden presence. But there was something in Helen's tone, a long-lost kindness, that made her relax. The healer offered her water in small portions, aware that letting her drink too much at once could be fatal. "That's it. Drink slowly. Let's get your strength back," Helen said as she carefully examined the mare's milky eyes. "Who could do this to you, poor thing? What kind of monster abandons a living being like this?" As the sun sank lower, Helen knew they couldn't remain there. Desert nights turned icy, and Star was far too weak to endure another extreme. With patience and expertise, she looped a makeshift lead around the mare's neck and started guiding. her walking alongside River, who seemed to grasp the situation and kept a steady pace. The trek home was grueling. Helen had to stop often to give Star water and let her rest. During these breaks, she applied salves to the mare's sunburned skin and kept talking, her voice serving as an anchor for the disoriented animal. When they finally reached Helen's small house, night had fallen completely. Sam, who had been keeping an anxious watch, ran to assist as soon as he spotted them. "Thank goodness you found her, Miss Helen," he exclaimed, helping guide Star into the modest stable beside the house. "But just look at her. Can she survive?" Helen regarded the mare with a determined yet hopeful gaze. "She's got a strong will to live, Sam, and now she has someone who won't give up on her." In the days that followed, Helen devoted herself wholly to Star's recovery. She used herbal poultices for the mare's sunburn, medicinal infusions to build up her weakened body, and gradually introduced nourishing foods. Although aware Star's blindness was irreversible, she applied a special ointment to ease any pain and stave off infection. Even more vital than physical care was the emotional connection forming between them. Helen spent hours by Star's side, talking and singing old desert songs, offering calm reassurances through her touch and voice. "You're going to be all right, my Star," Helen whispered as she gently brushed the mare's whitening mane. "We'll show them you still have so much to live for and teach." Slowly, Star responded to the treatment. She began to put on weight, shifting from fearful submissiveness to growing confidence. Though she remained blind, she learned to maneuver around Helen's modest property with surprising ease, guided by the healer's voice and the fragrance of the abundant plants surrounding the house. Word of Star's rescue spread quickly through White Mesa and neighboring towns. Curious people came to see the mare who had survived the desert and found new life under Helen's care. Among the visitors were children from the local school, whom Helen welcomed regularly, using Star as a vivid example of resilience and perseverance. "Look how she finds her way, even though she can't see," Helen explained to the awestruck children. "She teaches us that eyes aren't always what matter. Sometimes we have to feel the world in other ways." The visits became so frequent that Helen decided to turn her property into a small sanctuary for rescued animals. Besides Star, she began taking in dogs left crippled by accidents, goats with broken horns, birds that could no longer fly. Each found not only medical attention but also dignity and respect under her roof. Meanwhile, at Dry Rock Ranch, Malcolm, Carter faced an unexpected series of setbacks. The drought that plagued the region intensified severely on his lands. Wells that had never dried up produced only muddy trickles. Entire fields withered mysteriously, and even the cattle began to fall ill. The ranch workers, long ruled by fear, whispered among themselves that the land was under a curse. Joseph, who had helped abandon Star in the desert, could no longer sleep. Night after night he saw that same haunting vision of the white mare, alone on the desert sands. One evening, burdened by guilt, Joseph confronted Malcolm in the main house. "Boss, there's something I need to tell you," he began, voice trembling under Malcolm's impatient stare. "I don't think what we did to Star was right. Ever since that day, nothing's gone right here." Malcolm let out a mocking laugh. "Don't tell me you believe in curses, Joseph. This is just coincidence. The drought's hurting everyone. Round here. It ain't just the drought, boss, it's everything and another thing. I heard the mare didn't die. They say some healer found her and saved her. Folks are calling it a miracle." Malcolm was taken aback. His first response was disbelief, soon replaced by anger. The notion that this mare he had dismissed as useless might still be alive, and worse, the talk of the region, disturbed him greatly. "Who is this healer?" he demanded, voice threatening. "Helen Brooks, over in White Mesa. Word is, she turned her place into a kind of rescue center for herd animals." Malcolm waved Joseph away, yet he couldn't shake the information. It wasn't merely wounded pride, there was something else, a pang he couldn't quite define. Remorse? Guilt? Emotions he had always considered useless for a man in his position. Over the following days, Malcolm grew even more irritable, taking out his frustrations on his staff. Rumors of Star's survival seemed to follow him, whispered conversations ending abruptly whenever he entered a room. His reputation, already stained by his harshness toward people and animals, now included the incident with Star, rapidly becoming local legend in livestock markets and bars across the region. Conditions at the ranch continued to decline. Creditors appeared more often, and Malcolm watched as the fortune he had built over decades began to crumble. In a final gesture of pride and defiance, he decided to visit Helen Brooks's sanctuary himself. He wanted to see with his own eyes the mare he had left for dead, only to hear she had refused to die on his terms. On a sweltering afternoon, Malcolm arrived alone at Helen's property. The stark contrast between her lush oasis and his withering fields was impossible to ignore. Children played out back, surrounded by animals of all sorts in peaceful cohabitation. And there she was, Star, her snowy coat gleaming in the sun, healthier than she had ever been under Malcolm's care. Noticing the rancher's imposing figure, Helen set aside the informal lesson she was teaching the children about medicinal plants and stepped forward, unafraid. "Mr. Carter, I presume. What brings you to our humble place?" she asked calmly. Malcolm, briefly disarmed by her serene composure, hesitated before answering. "I came to see the mare. I heard you found her out in the desert." Helen nodded, her green eyes boring into his as if uncovering the darkest secrets of his soul. "Yes, I found Star nearly dead, thrown away as if she had no worth. But as you can see, she's proved she has far more value than some people believed." Sensing tension, the children and other visitors gave them space. Malcolm felt exposed, judged not only by Helen's penetrating gaze but by every living thing in that place, so full of care and vitality. "She was my property," he declared, trying to reclaim his old air of authority. "I have the right to do as I please with what's mine." Helen's smile was slight and did not reach her eyes. "Oh, really? And what do you do with property you deem no longer useful? Throw it into the desert to die?" Her voice rose a fraction. "No living being is another's property, Mr. Carter. We all share the same land, the same sky. That's what Star has shown people around here." As if sensing her former owner's presence, Star approached slowly. Neither fearful nor vengeful, she positioned herself by Helen's side, head high in a silent dignity that defied everything Malcolm once stood for. In that moment, Malcolm felt something break inside him. He wasn't just seeing the mare he'd condemned to die now thriving under someone else's care. He was confronting the sudden, painful realization of what he had lost in his pursuit of control and power. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice stripped of its usual arrogance. "Money, public acknowledgement that I was wrong?" Helen shook her head, gently stroking Star's neck. "I want nothing from you, Mr. Carter. I already have all I need right here. But maybe you came looking for something. Maybe you wanted more than just a glimpse of a mare that refused to die on your orders. Maybe you're after a glimpse of what your life could have been had you chosen a different path." The words hit Malcolm like stones tossed into stagnant water, their ripples spreading beyond his immediate understanding. He looked around at the children playing once again, at the serenity in the animals' eyes, at the lush plants flourishing in soil that should have been as arid as his own heart. "How do you do all this?" he whispered. "How do you make everything grow and thrive here while my land just shrivels by the day?" Helen offered a more genuine smile this time. "It's quite simple. I care for what's entrusted to me with love and respect. I don't take more than I need, and I give back to the land what it gives to me. You built your fortune by always taking, Mr. Carter. Perhaps it's time you started giving back." Before Malcolm could answer, Star took a surprising step toward him and pressed her muzzle against his shoulder, a gesture so unexpected that he froze. That gentle contact, coming from an animal he had once condemned, seemed to offer not just forgiveness, but also a chance for redemption. "She senses your inner conflict," Helen said softly. "Even blind, Star sees things many of us with. Perfect vision never can. She sees the essence of people, their true intentions, whether they're kind or cruel." Malcolm felt the weight of those words more keenly than any burden he had ever carried. He stood there, letting the small haven Helen had created wash over him, filled with creatures who had found refuge, and visitors who had discovered hope. At last, with a sigh that seemed to free decades of pent-up hardness, he made a decision. "My ranch is dying," he admitted, raw vulnerability in his voice. "Nothing I do is helping. If you can teach me, if you can show me how to tend my land as you do this place." Helen studied his face, searching for false motives. She saw only a broken man, finally confronting the ghosts of his own past. "I can teach you what I know, Mr. Carter, but learning won't come from my words or instructions alone. It must also come from your heart, from your willingness to change not just your methods, but your way of seeing the world." At that moment, a mild breeze drifted through the sanctuary, carrying the scent of thriving medicinal herbs. Star let out a soft whinny, as though giving her approval to a silent pact forming between these two individuals. In the weeks that followed, a remarkable transformation swept through the region. Malcolm Carter, the once dreaded rancher whose reputation was built on intimidation and cruelty, became Helen Brooks's student. Each day he traveled to her sanctuary to learn about sustainable practices that had turned that modest plot of land into a flourishing oasis. Locals watched, stunned, and skeptical in equal measure. Some believed it was merely a ploy for Malcolm to obtain knowledge to save his ranch. Others, more cynical, waited for him to revert to his old nature. But Helen, who saw beyond surface judgments, recognized subtle changes within him. While she taught Malcolm about balance, how each plant, each animal, each drop of water had its place, she sensed the cracks in the fortress he had built around himself. It was like watching a man emerge step by step from a prison of his own making. "The land doesn't just respond to hard work, Mr. Carter," she explained one day while they prepared organic compost. "It responds to intention, respect, and genuine care. You can't force it to produce with aggressive methods and expect it to stay fertile forever." Malcolm's hands, now calloused in ways different from brandishing a whip or yanking reins, absorbed her every word, as parched ground absorbs long-awaited rain. "I always believed dominating was the key to success," he admitted, staring at a worm wiggling through the rich soil they had prepared. "Dominating the land, the animals, the workers. Now I see that control was an illusion. The tighter I grasped, the more everything slipped away." At the same time, his relationship with Star evolved in ways nobody would have foreseen. Initially, he avoided close contact with her, still burdened by guilt. Yet the Mare, with a generosity that defied human logic, was often the one to approach him first. Over time, she seemed to grant him her trust. "How can she forgive me so easily?" he asked Helen one day, gently stroking Star's silky mane. "After all I've done?" Helen smiled, watching the unlikely bond forming between a once cruel man and his former victim. "Animals don't hold grudges like we do. They live in the present, sensing what we offer right now, not what we did yesterday. Star feels your remorse and your sincere wish to change. She forgave you the moment you started forgiving yourself." Helen's lessons extended beyond how to treat animals. Malcolm gradually introduced these principles to his own ranch, adopting methods that worked in harmony with the land, reducing harsh chemicals, installing systems to harvest rainwater, and rehabilitating overfarmed areas. Most astonishing was the shift in how he treated his ranch workers. Men and women who once quaked under his rule now noticed a genuine concern for their ideas and well-being. Joseph and Manuel, the two who had taken Star to the desert, were the first to see a fundamental shift in their boss. "Never thought I'd see the day," Joseph told Manuel, watching Malcolm help set up a new irrigation system to benefit both the ranch and nearby communities. "It's like he's a whole new person." Manuel, usually quiet, only nodded, his eyes reflecting the same astonishment and growing respect. Over the months, the results of these transformations became evident. Dry Rock Ranch, previously known for exploitation and heavy-handed methods, turned into a local example of sustainable ranching. The worn-out fields started to recover. Springs once believed gone began trickling back, and native vegetation gradually returned in areas set aside for conservation. Word of this turnaround spread, drawing the attention of ranchers from surrounding regions. Visitors arrived to see the new farming techniques in action, and left impressed not just by the tangible success, but also by Malcolm's personal change. Helen, observing all this with equal parts humility and pride, knew the real miracle lay not in any particular method or technique. The miracle was in being open to transformation, in acknowledging wrongs, and in having the courage to follow a new path, even when that path seemed to undermine everything one had once stood for. A year after Star's rescue, a special moment arrived one afternoon. Helen was in her garden when Malcolm showed up at her sanctuary with a group of local school children, the same children who had once feared even mentioning his name. "I brought these kids to hear Star's story," he explained as they took in the sanctuary with wide-eyed wonder. "I want them to understand how such a remarkable creature can teach lessons no book could ever match." Helen watched, tears silently running down her cheeks, as Malcolm, his once harsh features now softened, told them about the cruelty he had shown Star, how his nearly fatal mistake became the first step on a road to redemption. He recounted how Helen taught him to see beyond appearances, to treasure every living thing, and to realize that true wealth was not in possessions or dominion, but in a deep harmony with the world around him. "Look, children," he said, pointing at Star, who approached, drawn by the children's excited voices. "This Mare can't see with her eyes, but she has a vision clearer than many of us ever will. She taught me that sometimes we have to lose something in order to truly start seeing." A little girl of about 8 raised her hand shyly. "But Mr. Carter, if Star can't see, how does she know where she's going?" Malcolm smiled and glanced at Helen, as though seeking her permission before he spoke. She nodded in encouragement. "She relies on other senses, sweetheart. She smells the air, hears the sounds around her, feels the ground beneath her hooves. And most importantly," he said, crouching to her eye level, "she trusts. She trusts that the path will open, that gentle hands will guide her when needed, that she'll never again face the desert alone." His simple but profound words moved everyone present, children and adults alike. Helen, watching all this, felt tears slip quietly down her face. They were not tears of sadness, but of recognition, of how, when nurtured by compassion and understanding, life can blossom in the most unlikely soil. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with the same orange and red tones that had lit the morning star was abandoned. The air now pulsed with hope and possibility. The Mare, feeling the last rays of heat on her pearly coat, lifted her head as if gazing at a horizon she perceived through different eyes. Then and there, everyone understood that some journeys begin precisely where they seem to end. That darkness, whether physical blindness or a heart hardened by misguided choices, can be the prelude to a brighter, more genuine light. And that even a desert, in all its apparent hostility, is sometimes the very place where the most miraculous transformations take shape. Helen, gently stroking Star's neck, whispered words the Mare alone could hear, yet which resonated in every heart. "Sometimes we must lose ourselves entirely to find our way home. And sometimes home isn't a place, but a state of mind where we finally recognize that we're part of something greater, something connecting us to every other being sharing our journey in this world." Malcolm, standing in respectful silence, knew then that his true riches lay not in acres of land or in the power he had once wielded, but in the chance to start over, to rewrite his legacy into something different from what he had originally planned, a legacy not of domination and fear, but of empathy and respect. And so, beneath a night sky growing steadily brighter with stars, the story of the Mare named Star continued to spread, touching lives and transforming hearts. Her tale showed that, even in the face of the gravest cruelty, fate still holds wonders for those who remain standing, fighting the desert with the unspoken dignity of those meant not merely to survive, but to illuminate the path for others who, likewise, seek meaning in what at first appears to be an indifferent expanse of life.